Hello, and welcome to the February monthly forecast. I'm Marga, and this is an astrological forecast for agents of evolution, everybody in a conscious relationship with their own evolution. And that's you because you're watching. And February is a month where we get to do a lot of conscious engagement with our own evolution if we choose to. So, my aim with these astrological forecasts every month is to help you steer and navigate your own evolution and to do it really consciously. It is an astrological forecast, so I am basing what I'm giving you on the planetary weather, but I'm also adding in quite a good dose of my own intuition and you could even say channeling of what I feel the planets are, the wisdom that they're offering us, a kind of evolutionary model they're giving us in the times ahead. I feel they really are guiding us as almost like a trusted mentor. Saturn's over there kind of mentoring us in a certain way. Jupiter's over there mentoring us in a certain way. And I'm bringing to you an interpretation of their mentorship for us. Okay, so with that said, February is a great month. February and March are both accelerated evolution months. And, evolution can sometimes be tricky and hard. And sometimes it's, full of candy grace. But February and March are months where it's a little bit more on the tricky and hard side. And this is because of our mentor up there in the sky, Saturn, who is an energy that is found in each of our lives. It's one of the, let's say, colors of the astrological spectrum. His hue or his color is really dominating the landscape in February. And this brings us into our spiritual adulthood. This is us looking at the situations of our lives with a really kind of calm, even, sober eye and kind of taking stock. Like, okay, that's not working. How do we fix it? What do we have to do? So Saturn is inviting each of us into um, our maturity and especially our evolutionary maturity. This is a month where the naps of January are over and we are just having to, get up early when it's cold, when it's dark, and start the day because you've got a million tasks ahead. Or this can also be a month where we meet up with certain failures or what we kind of initially, the sting feels like failures or setbacks or even our own doubts and uncertainties about our own capacities, or even on an even deeper level, shame that has been sort of installed very early in this life or even from the ancestors. So, we can be looking at these different levels of, the idea of a failure or a setback or doubts and uncertainties or shame, deeply rooted. And ideally, what we're doing is getting to that, you know, deep root of shame and working with it, making it conscious, bringing it up into the conscious mind and really working with it, sort of, it's a part of us. It doesn't have to, we're not trying to make it go, but we are wanting to make it conscious so that there can be less of a shadow working of shame and more of um, a loving, compassionate inclusion of shame that when it is lovingly, compassionately, truly included, becomes a little bit more the voice of you don't want to go down that road because you've done that before and it doesn't feel good. So that's kind of a more mature working with Saturn. A lot of us kind of kick and scream, me totally included. Uh, yeah. Um, we kick and scream when things go wrong. We don't like it. It's not fun. It can be painful. It can be really embarrassing. It can be humiliating. So um, what the way we want to respond to Saturn is the same way we learn to respond to those healthy authorities in our lives that we know have our best interest at heart. And yeah, sometimes they can be heavy-handed, sometimes they can be unfair. The ones who have our true best interest at heart will never go to the cruel side. We may experience a lot of the things that go on this year as a kind of heavy-handedness or harshness or cruelty. Maybe it is, maybe it, who's to say, really, who is the judge of that? But what we can do inside the heavy-handedness of Saturn in our own lives and also collectively is to see what part of this is actually a good restraint, a good setback, a good um, uh, way of disciplining myself in order that longevity or sustainability or health for the collective um, is achieved. Now, I am I am not saying that there is one right way. There is not one right way. And this is another piece of Saturn, is to allow everyone their true engagement with this process, and without judgment and without resentment. That's an important one. And with humility. Saturn is dominant in this landscape, and Saturn is asking us uh, to really look at what is good for the whole, what is good for me. And Saturn really responds to when we do the work. So when we say, I can't do this too much, I'm overwhelmed, and we say, I need to get some help and shore this up. We got to do that work. We have to actually get that help and shore the things up, um, in order to please this mentor, this energy that exists in all of us as a certain capacity for self-discipline and for restraint. So that's working with Saturn and our own spiritual adulthood. A wonderful thing to understand about Saturn, it is possible to move ahead even with fear, even with doubt, self-doubt. But we want to know how much of that is actually a good thing to be working with. If there's just tremendous fear and self-doubt, it's not going to go well, you know. But a healthy amount of fear and self-doubt is not a bad thing. It actually keeps us kind of toned spiritually. Also, in line with our spiritual maturity, I want to bring in this idea, the collective uh, contemplation around the things that we take for granted. Things like our electrical grid or the highway system here in the United States or in any country. Foundational things, infrastructures, um, things like money, things like the Earth's capacity to produce food or the storage of food. Collectively, we are being asked to become more mature, more responsible in the ways that we work with these, 3D, the third dimension, these aspects of living in a tangible physical world that are required for our bodies to be here and for us to engage in the socially meaningful ways that we've so far set up for ourselves. Now, that's not to say that we can't set up different ways of meaningfully socially engaging. In fact, I feel that a lot of the tears in the fabric or the cracks in the foundations that will start to become super noticeable in February and March uh, are an invitation to rebuild the foundations. So part of what we'll be doing in this month collectively in terms of spiritual maturity and our mentor Saturn, who is inviting us into a level of sobriety and maturity and realistic views of longevity and sustainability. What Saturn is asking us to do here with that is to understand that changes need to be made, and how can we design our new systems, our new infrastructures in a way that is in line with something much more realistic. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about, I don't quite know how to talk about it, to be honest. I'll give you the image that came to me. I saw this ear. We just had a new moon in the lunar sign of Shravana, which is symbolized by an ear. So this month, there is this theme of listening in really deeply. So I saw an ear releasing things. So the ear doesn't project sound, it receives sound. And yet, sound is, we are told by scriptures all over the globe, that sound is the beginning of creation. That vibration is the beginning of the creative act. And so it was really interesting. Like, the ear is such an esoterically fascinating part of us. It is completely passive, one would think, that it's receiving all the time. And once the sound is made, it cannot be unmade. You can't unhear something. It's, once a sound is registered, it is always in the ethers as a vibration that is continually cycling, which is why we're told to be careful with our speech and to be mindful even of our thoughts, because our thoughts are also forms of sound. So this image of an ear releasing all these thought forms, words, things that it has heard, was a collective mass rejection of old stories. That's one way to sort of see that image, hear, interpret, perceive, apprehend that image. One thing I sense is happening in February is that we are culturally mass rejecting things we have, stories we've been told, things we've been heard. We are expelling it somehow from our systems. And that could look many different ways. And for sure, we've got Pluto coming up to a conjunction with Mars and Venus later, or let's say Mars and Venus coming into conjunction with Pluto later this month, early next month. And so that propulsion of those old stories, and we could even say of the old male and female roles, we could say of our desires. Our desires are changing. Our what we love, what we want to live for, what brings us joy is changing. So for sure, this is astrologically represented, and the image to me signifies something that is kind of a collective dynamic going on. That there's a mass rejection of old stories. Okay, the second main kind of planetary weather thing going on is Venus and Mars throughout the months of February and March. But in February, it really starts to get going right in time for Valentine's Day. Venus and Mars kind of doing this tango together. One overtakes the other overtakes the other. There's a beautiful dance going on between the two of them. These two energies, I'm just going to say it, are very, very difficult to bring into a kind of cooperation. People who do have these energies balanced are so easy to be around. They are so fun to be around. But most of us have one of them dominating. If Mars and Venus are together in a chart, or when Mars and Venus transit very close together, like they are in February and March, one of them tends to dominate in our own expression. And it usually tends to be Mars, because Mars can be a little bit of a bully. But Venus can be really manipulative and get her own way too. Like they have their 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 downsides. But when they are truly working together, it's incredible. So this earlier today, I was trying to come up with words that would express a certain esoteric side of Venus and Mars. And I came up with soulfulness for Venus and skillfulness for Mars. There's a lot of S's, soulfulness and skillfulness. Soulfulness is that, the artist who they've got so much life and soul, and sometimes it translates as beauty, or not all beauty is soulful, but sometimes beauty is soulful. And that's Venus. That's when Venus is strong, and she comes through in speech, or she comes through in a work of art, or a meal, or a gentle touch, or whatever. There's a certain soulfulness to it. Mars, on his esoteric kind of higher function, I would say, is skillfulness, is the capacity to make something happen with precision, with a certain kind of passionate precision. Now, when these two come together, Venus and Mars, and skillfulness and soulfulness, you get the athlete who is just incredibly precise and just nails it, but also has this real soulfulness to their movements, or an artist who is, incredibly soulful, but also so artistically advanced in their expression. So the two together can produce really incredible things. But what they tend to do on a lower level is they tend to make us want things, and then with a certain kind of lustfulness, like go after things. You can always look at this dance between Venus and Mars, skillfulness and soulfulness, skillfulness and soulfulness. If one starts to dominate, invite the other to, step up more. And you want to invite the one who is dominating to hang back a little bit. You're not going to lose your soulfulness. You're not going to lose your skillfulness by engaging the other a little bit more. This is one of those dances of yin and yang in the chart. This goes on in many different areas of the chart. Let's say between the moon and the sun, moon being yin, sun being yang. But Venus and Mars have a certain yin and yang to them. So these next couple months, we are needing to kind of move into our yang, but we cannot do it at the sacrifice of yin. So it's a very tricky balance to strike, but it is an agent of evolution's work this month in February for sure. All right, I want to share with you a couple of things. I'm super excited. My website is finally done. If you haven't been to it in a while, margalauba.com. I'm very excited to be bringing more and more offerings over time, and this website will now allow me to do that. So check it out. There's also, if you've read the book Agents of Evolution, there is a page up on that website of the featured agents of evolution under the About tab. So you can see each of the people that were featured, written about in the book. You can see their photograph and maybe a little bit about them. So I hope you'll check that out. And I'm also super excited to tell you about a book review that came out in the Mountain Astrologer about of Agents of Evolution, an astrological guide for transformative times. The book that I recently published. Yeah, it's in the Aries Knox issue of the Mountain Astrologer magazine. It's just such an honor to be reviewed because I've been reading that magazine since I was an astrological fledgling myself back in the 80s when they first started the magazine. It's now grown into this big, beautiful kind of cultural piece that I love. So it was real honor to be featured there. I think that's it for announcements. Have a really wonderful February, and I'll be back with you in March for the March monthly forecast.